Good morning, everyone. Let's do our friends a favor. Could you raise your hand high up if you've got empty seats at your table? So if you're looking for a seat, look around for those hands. In the words of Luther Vandross, a chair is not a chair unless there's someone sitting there. So please find a seat, and thank you to our colleagues who are helping to provide extra seats. So we do have seats up front and throughout the middle. We're really grateful that folks showed up today to participate, grab some breakfast, and connect with one another. Well, good morning, everyone. I am excited to be with you today for 2024 Convocation for faculty and staff of the Seattle colleges. If I haven't met you yet, my name is Rosie Rimando-Chareunsap, and I serve as the Chancellor for the Seattle colleges. Before we get rolling with the more formal parts of our agenda, I'd like to invite DeAndre Fisher, our Associate Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Community, to the stage for our land acknowledgments.
Greetings, community. Glad to be here with you all. I will read our land acknowledgments, remembering that our land acknowledgments are not to be scripted and stagnant, so they will read differently. We will make sure to have our institutional actions too as well. But it reads as follows. On behalf of the Seattle colleges, we acknowledge that we occupy the traditional lands of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Tulalip, Chuquamish, and all the people that are still here, honoring and bringing their ancient history. Without them, we would not have today's access to this gathering, to the dialogue, to our learning space. We ask that each of you take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land, air, and water. We also pause to honor the survival and the force of affiliation and the resiliency and the creativity of our Native peoples, past, present, and future. We also pause to recognize the enslaved indigenous people who were forced and underpaid labor to construct this country, this state, and this city. To the people who contributed to this immeasurable amount of work, to their descendants, us, we acknowledge their art and indelible mark on this space in which we gather. It is our collective responsibility to critically interrogate these histories, repair the harm, protect and honor and sustain not only this beloved land, but also think about the lives that are being lost around the country. May we pause for a moment of unity. Thank you. Ashe and Ashe and Ashe.
Thank you, DeAndre. And before we dive in, I want to take a moment to thank South's Brockey Center staff and culinary arts students for catering our breakfast this morning and our lunch later afternoon. We're really fortunate to have culinary programs at two of our colleges, and that we have the Brockey Center Conference Center staff here with this facility to be able to host our larger events like this. So thank you very much. And please offer them your thanks as you see them working around the room, refilling coffee, and serving later on today. You walk past the lunch location, the lunch buffet line as you came in, if you came in through the back there. I'd also like to acknowledge SCC TV for live streaming today's program on seattlecolleges.tv. They'll also have it available on demand as well. So give a wave. I see Tom and Dean back there. And also want to thank our facilities and our information technology, our IT team, for supporting today's events, especially the workshops later on today. A couple of last housekeeping notes. Restrooms are on the other side of this wall in the hallway by the mirrored walls. And please silence your cell phones so that you don't interrupt my amazing speech that's about to happen. We have an engaging morning and afternoon ahead of us, so let's get started. Joining me in today's program are two of Seattle College's trustees, the Board of Trustees, Louise Chernin and Teresita Batayola. Up here in the front, if you could please stand and give a wave. Our other board members, Colleen Echohawk, Brian Surratt, and Rosa Peralta, send their regrets today, but a couple of them will be able to participate in the President's Day events around the three colleges later on this week. But we're grateful, Trustee Chernin, Trustee Batayola, Louise, and Teresita, thank you for being here with us today to celebrate and kick off the year. A long-standing tradition for Convocation is greetings from our labor partners, the employee unions. So I'd like to welcome Johnny Dwyer, President for the Washington Federation of State Employees, Local 304, Elena Rivero, President of the American Federation of Teachers, Local 1789, and Rachel Gentner, President of American Federation of Teachers, the Seattle Professional Staff, to come and join me at the podium to make their remarks.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Convocation. For those of you who have not yet enjoyed the pleasure of hearing me stutter and yammer on this stage previously, my name is Johnny Dwyer. I am closing in on my 9th year as an IT worker here at the Seattle Colleges. Thank you. I'm an alumnus of the IT programs at Seattle Central, and always share how transformative my experience was there. I received a quality education, relevant industry skills, and it permanently changed my career trajectory for the better. Just like the other 40+% of Washington's workers who have acquired their skills in our statewide community and technical college systems. I am also president of Washington Federation of State Employees, Local 304, representing classified staff at each of our campuses and the district office. It is in that role, and as an organized worker at this institution, which I address this assembly today. Anyone who has observed my questionable oratory performances in years past knows that I relish speaking directly, sometimes uncomfortably so, particularly to those in positions of power. I do not pull punches and never miss an opportunity to pierce the facade of bourgeois liberal hypocrisy, and I sure stay busy with that of late. Many have already asked what I planned for today. Some director-level positions and higher have even joked with me about it, wondering, what's that chucker going to say this time? Rest assured that I had another version of this address, one filled with all the fire and brimstone, for sure the stuff of bully pulpits. Then I considered the spirit of togetherness and cooperation which brings us here today and changed tack a bit. Our union has established an open line of communication with the Chancellor's office, the likes of which we've not seen before. We've seen some relief in the form of hiring more classified staff. Neither of these things seemed possible just a couple of years ago. It's progress, and it should be duly noted. Still, the reality is, classified staff are not fully feeling that togetherness and cooperation. Not like we should. Materially, times are hard for us. Harder than last year and the year before that. We've seen an uptick in hiring for classified vacancies. Great. But many critical positions remain unfilled. Recruitment, particularly for our trades positions, stalls because we cannot properly incentivize career-minded workers on these salaries. This perpetual cycle of short staffing and turnover is burning out the existing classified staff who heroically gut it out at the colleges every day. We often feel like there is little hope on the horizon, especially when we see what paltry offer is currently on the table in this contract cycle. We cannot continue on in this trend. It's bad for the workers, it's bad for our institution, and worst of all, it's bad for our students. We are not creating the type of educational experience our students deserve when classified staff are putting groceries on credit and fretting over whether to pay our phone or electric bill first. This is a renewed call to the Board of Trustees. Help us. Sit down with classified staff, the Chancellor, and our agent directly without filtering from your coterie of executives and directors and executive directors. Truly consider our ideas. We might not be able to address the wage issues in the immediate future, but we can get on the road. As I so love reminding everyone, it is classified labor that runs this college, down to the setup of rooms just like this one. That labor must be properly valued. Paraphrasing the words of Sartre in his preface to Fanon's Wretched of the Earth, it is not greed or hot-headedness or unhappy childhoods that give us some uncommon taste for anger. We act as the interpreter of our situation, nothing more. The governing body of Seattle colleges, so liberal and so humane, who have such a seemingly exaggerated adoration for us that it borders on affectation, pretend to forget that their actions can change this for all of us. And to preclude the tired refrain we usually hear, "That's the way things are," was never an acceptable explanation for anything, and it certainly isn't in 2024. Child labor was once the way things were. Women not allowed to manage their own finances was also the way things were. So was redlining. And then we progressed. Boldness, the courage to do what's right, and acting collectively for the benefit of all people is what amends our errant ways. It was most certainly not, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once declared, polite liberal bigotry, or what I often describe as NIMBY indifference. So let's do it, eh? Seattle Colleges talks a good game. Now let's see if our governing body can partner with us and make a real material delivery on those lofty values of equity and inclusion, especially for us classified staff. Finally, to all those classified staff who are ready to join in our union struggle for the respect and compensation we've earned, to secure our share of the value we create at this institution, stop by our table in the back, get signed up, and get active today. Thanks, everyone.
I'm not used to speaking through my phone. Hi, my name is Elena Ribeiro, and I'm English faculty at Seattle Central. I'm also currently serving as AFT 1789, the Faculty Union's district president. First, I want to acknowledge that a lot of folks here today are hurting because we recently lost a student and comrade. Ejner Ejgi was a student at Central, and she was murdered by the Israeli military while she was fighting for justice and in solidarity with the people of Palestine. I would like us to take a moment of silence for Ejner. Thank you. Next, we stand in solidarity with our sister unions, WFC and AFT Pro staff. We would like to congratulate WFC on their progress towards their contract and offer our solidarity and material support to AFT Pro staff, who will begin negotiating their contract soon. And we'd like to give a shout out to the 33,000 Boeing machinists currently on strike, many of whom have studied and taught here at South. In the last year, through incredible cross-union organizing, we, AFT 1789, AFT Pro staff, and WFC, fought to ensure that folks are paid correctly and on time. As a result of this cross-union work, the district has announced that they have finalized a contract with a firm to conduct a Big A audit of our payroll systems that will bring us further clarity into the payroll problems that have been exacerbated since we were forced to implement CTC Link by the State Board of Community and Technical Colleges in 2020. Unions are experiencing the highest level of public support in decades and moving more and more towards collective, democratic, member-led decision-making. I don't think that's a coincidence. And I would like to highlight some of the ways in which our local, the largest AFT local in the state, is at the forefront of some of the practices that are re-energizing unions across our state and the country. It's true, people keep reaching out to us being all like, how did you do that? In the fall of last year, a rank-and-file group of members drafted a statement in support of Palestine for the locals' endorsement. And our early and prescient endorsement of the uncommitted movement got our local a mention in the little old New York Times. In our current contract negotiations, we have implemented a collective and open bargaining strategy that draws on the experience, talents, and working conditions of our entire faculty. Last year, we fought for and won open negotiations. This is a big effing deal. With open negotiations, all faculty can observe our negotiation sessions either in person or via Zoom. In Negotiations Caucus, union members help steer the negotiations team in real time. Attending negotiations is not only a way of co-constructing our working conditions, but also serves to help us understand the what's, how's, and why's of our collective bargaining agreement and our collective working conditions. And critically, the more you show up, the more power we have. And the more power we have, the more we can win. Our proposals and counterproposals are also collective. We compiled the thoughts, concerns, ideas, and information shared by hundreds of members, and from that, dozens of folks worked on a total of 31 proposals to better our working conditions and our students' learning conditions. The contract issues team strategy is a strategy that our rank-and-file members learned from the late, great Jane McAlevey, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year, but whose legacy is a reinvigorated, collective, transparent, democratic, and progressive union movement. Everybody clap for Jane. Amazing. In our negotiations, we have already achieved some tentative agreements on some issues that we believe will improve our working conditions. But we can only win what we are willing to fight for. So we ask our membership to stay informed on our bargaining by reading our session updates, checking our bargaining tracker, talking to each other, and attending membership meeting and events. But most importantly, we need folks to keep showing up, whether in person or remotely, to our negotiation sessions. Whatever improvements to our material and working conditions that we land on for our final contract will be a direct reflection and totally contingent on our union's power, and how much effort each one of us is willing to put in to build and show that power. I've talked already about some of the big public wins so far, but there have also been multiple quieter wins that we have won through our new grievance process, which is handled by a district-wide committee and is basically a contract think tank and contract enforcement agency. Some of these grievances have resulted in major collective gains, such as securing last year's 4.5% local increase for full-time faculty who started in fall of 23. And good news, you'll be hearing from Julian soon about if you're non-high demand, new full-time faculty, should be getting back pay in your September 25th paycheck. And if you don't, you know who to call. The grievance committee has also worked to ensure that temporary full-time assignments are paid at the correct salary level when it was discovered that some folks were being placed in lower salary categories than they should have been. These individual wins mean that we all win as a collective, in that we become a stronger, better supported, solidaire workforce. While we're speaking of financials, the second portion of our legislative statewide 2023-2024 COLA, which was 5.834% this year, has kicked in this summer. But we're still behind where we need to be in order to keep up with the high cost of living and inflation in our area. We've only just started negotiating our salary increases. So this year, although we have some wins behind us, we'll have to fight like hell to get what we deserve. So now it's your turn. These wins are all a result of fresh ideas and new folks stepping into union roles. This keeps the union nimble, responsive, and supple. If you want to continue to see wins like these, then we need folks to step up so we can ensure sustainability in the union. And that includes rotating leadership to keep things flexible, fresh, and energetic. We have union officer elections coming up in the spring, and we encourage folks to step into leadership roles together to share the load and to keep ideas flowing, even if you're new to this kind of work. Think about what kind of role you might want to play in developing the union's local strategy. And please feel free to reach out to the folks currently in those positions to hear more about the day-to-day work of union work. We have a contact sheet at our, where's that table? Over there. We have a table over there. We've got contact information for all the e-board members. We have our bargaining tracker link. We have membership forms. But if you feel more action-oriented, consider joining CAT. our contract action team, which develops plans and implements direct action strategies in support of our negotiations and our working conditions. We all know that direct action gets the goods. So we have union officer contact sheets at the little table over there, also more information on how to get active in the union, how to contact CAT team, etc. We stand together in the everlasting collective struggle. Thank you. I'll see you at the little table as I fall off the stage.
I'm trying to be short and sweet, and I am both of those things, so I'll do my best. First off, a huge thank you and shout out to WUFC and our faculty partners as we work together at Seattle Colleges Workers United on payroll issues and other collective bargaining things that impact the entire district. It truly is a great time to be in a union, a unionized worker, and just know that the unions do talk to each other, I promise. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rachel Gintner. I am an academic advisor here at South Seattle College, and I have the absolute honor to serve as president of the Seattle Professional Staff Union. We represent almost 250 workers across all 3 campuses, and a lot of that work goes unseen, and it just gets done. And so, ultimately, unions are about contracts, they're about money, they're about power, but here are some of the victories that we have done in the last year and things that we're going to continue to fight for and things that you all might not know of. As Elena said, we're fighting and winning for an audit of payroll, which we'll be rolling out this year. We're talking data and procedures ensuring that your pay is accurate. I know that hasn't been the experience this summer, but we are working to make it better and ensure that we have the information needed in order to make sure that it's right. We are getting severance and ensuring that our non-renewed colleagues are treated with dignity at every step of the process. We're bargaining for impact on district-wide campus policy changes. We are in those rooms. We are advocating for you, whether you know it or not, and we're advocating for safe and equitable working conditions for our pro staff folks. Yeah. We're also going to Capitol Hill and we're lobbying lawmakers and the state board for better wage increases, better COLAs, better money. That's what we're advocating for. Ultimately, our power comes from our contract, which is going up for negotiations this spring, and we are looking for you to come out and support us. Whether you're a member, a non-member, we want you to come out and fight for our contract, because ultimately the contract is what gives us our power, but also shows that we care for one another and ensures that that we get treated fairly, because if it's not written down, it's not real. And so please come visit me. Love to have you. Otherwise, thanks everybody. I hope we have a great day.
Join me in thanking Johnny Dwyer, Elena Rivero, and Rachel Gintner one more time. Thank you for speaking on behalf of in the room and not in the room. I also wanted to make sure that anybody that's standing, can we make sure that those folks are offered a seat if they'd like one? I know that we had chairs brought in, so again, could you just throw a hand up if there's an empty seat at your table? And folks, please feel comfortable snaking your way around, say hi to people along the way, and find a seat if you'd be more comfortable. Otherwise, I'll let it go. I just want to make sure that everyone is comfortable. It really is so good to see so many of you here today. Kickoff speeches tend to be, they're really hopeful, really optimistic, and also it's necessary to recognize the challenges, the real challenges that we're facing as an organization, as individuals, as a region, as a society these days. But I want to focus first on the hopefulness of this moment. It's back to school. Everybody's wearing their first day best. I know that I am. And Convocation is traditionally the front bookend of the academic year, with the closing bookend being commencement. And you'll see a video in a bit that will share some of the imagery from that. But we come together to kick off the year together, set a tone and an intention for the year ahead of us as we work with our students. So you were already doing it this morning, but as you go through the day, connecting with colleagues, saying hi for the first time in a few months, maybe connecting with colleagues across the district that you only see a couple times a year, or meeting folks for the first time, whether they're new or you're just meeting for the first time and not on Zoom, especially perhaps if you're meeting new colleagues, please take a moment to enjoy and embrace that connection, because that is what sustains us through the year, and those connections are what help our students to have a more positive and more supported experience while we're here. This last year has been really busy with rebuilding the leadership team across the district. As everybody knows by now, we hired 3 presidents last year in an unprecedented triple search. So many thanks once again. There were dozens of you who participated in the search committees, and then there were hundreds of you that participated in meeting folks at the finalist level and sharing information and your feedback to really inform my final selection. And so I want to take an opportunity today not only to introduce our presidents, but also the Chancellor's executive cabinets. You can see them on the placemats that you might have picked up here at the front of the room on your way in, next to the swag. Shout out to the wonderful fanny pack with the mascots on it. I love it. But let me start with the presidents. And so, friends, as I call your name up, if you wouldn't mind stepping up and standing here in front of the room to be introduced along with your colleagues. I'll start with the presidents. First, Dr. Rachel Salamsas, president at North Seattle College. She is the head tree frog there. Dr. Bradley Lane, president at Seattle Central College. And Dr. Monica Brown, president here at South Seattle College. She has the home field advantage today. I'd also like to invite up Julianne DeGuiter, Vice Chancellor for Finance and Operations. Jennifer Dixon, Vice Chancellor for Human Resources, will be joining us later this morning. Carrie Howell, Vice Chancellor for Advancement and CEO of the Seattle Colleges Foundation. She is ready to represent us tonight at Seattle College Band of Meriters. Ernest Phillips, Vice Chancellor for Public Relations and Strategic Initiatives. Barb Childs, Associate Vice Chancellor for Public Relations and Strategic Initiatives. DeAndre Fisher, Associate Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Community. Everybody say howdy, DeAndre. Dr. Cedric Howard, Associate Vice Chancellor for Strategic Enrollment Management. Dr. Cindy Ritchie, Associate Vice Chancellor for Information Technology. Melody McMillan, Senior Executive Director of Seattle Promise. And Vanessa Johnson, Senior Executive Assistant to the Chancellor's Office and the Board of Trustees. Soon to be announced, we're in the process of hiring district-wide leaders in workforce development, where we've had vacancy, and international programs. But I want to acknowledge our interim leaders, and if you could stand when I call your name, that would be wonderful. Rachel Andre and Chris Sullivan have been representing workforce development across the district. And Lindsay S. and Sean Hoffman and David Roseberry have been representing international program leadership during this transition time as well. We're really grateful. So these folks represent the direction of leadership that I've been cultivating, one of collaborative district-wide leadership where decision-making reflects a shared responsibility for each of the colleges and of our students as a whole. These are also leaders who understand that we serve across the district from each of our respective roles and work with the president and the cabinet teams and other college colleagues to ensure that we develop and nurture strong connections of support and progress across all of the Seattle colleges. So thank you very much for joining me up front. You might have a seat. We are the folks that you will continue to hold accountable for the expectations that we have across the district as it relates to how we serve our students well and advance them towards their own success as they define it. There's another group of people that is really critical to acknowledge at this time, and they've been mentioned a couple of times by previous remarks. It's a critical team across our district. These folks are often performing their work in the background or during hours where they may be unseen by most of us. Their work ensures the literal learning environments are ready for a new year and are supported and cared for throughout the year. They're often the first on the scene when something goes wrong. They are also those whose work was considered essential through the pandemic. These are colleagues that know our students as well because they see them and interact with them on a daily basis. And today I want to shine a spotlight on the critical nature of these colleagues who you may know by name or at least face, but who you may not sit in meetings with. I know many of them may not be here this morning because they are focused on preparing our college campuses for next week, but nevertheless, we must acknowledge and thank them today. Will our colleagues in campus services, grounds, facilities, and custodial please stand to be recognized by your colleagues today? They represent dozens of other colleagues who are at it in their roles or are coming on shift later today or even in the evening to prepare. So please, when you see our colleagues across the campuses, please offer them a thank you and for the work that they do that doesn't often get recognized. But we thank you for your work, of our care of our colleges, our colleagues, and our students. You are also central to the student experience through the ways that you support and care for the learning environment and our colleagues' working environments, so thank you. So, colleagues, I have a confession to make. I have not been a whole person since I have stepped into the role of acting chancellor in 2022. And you should know that this has certainly affected the way that I have led these last 2 years. I have been in grief and grieving steadily since I have set foot in this role. When I was president at South, I lost my father in February 2022 to COVID, at a time when I had been working relentlessly to protect our own community from the virus spreading across our campuses. My grief was still very new when the board tapped me on the shoulder in May of 2022 to prepare to step into the acting chancellor role that July. So while I was personally walking through the stages of immediate grief, I was also stepping into the role of acting chancellor and working to lead us through significant financial and organizational instability at that time. I applied for and was selected to move from acting to interim chancellor in October 2022 while rebuilding our finances, our finance team, and seeking to repair broken trust across the district. In August 2023, I again applied for and was selected as your permanent chancellor. The daily pain of grief had evolved to being more subdued, but ever present. And last summer, I was really looking forward to hitting the ground running in the new role last fall, getting all the president positions filled and continuing our stabilization work in other areas. And on the day before Convocation last year, September 22nd, I was with my mom in the hospital when she was diagnosed with stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma, a terminal cancer of the bile duct. My husband and I moved her into our home that day, and I immediately became her primary caretaker. So as I was stepping into the biggest professional job of my life, I took on this other full-time role, bringing her to weekly chemo and appointments or coordinating transportation for her when I couldn't, keeping up communications and appointments with multiple medical providers. Those of you who've done this too for a loved one know what I'm talking about. With a terminal diagnosis of a few months to a year, I was also connecting her with family from across the world and comforting them through their shock and reaction because my mom was the matriarch in her large Filipino family. And of course, I was spending quiet moments with my mom when I could through her own stages of grief. And earlier this year, the night before graduation, after 9 months or an academic year spent caring for my mother with cancer, she was hospitalized one final time, and we knew it was going to be the final time. My big brother flew into town that day, told me, go to graduation, and assured me he'd stay with mom. And graduation was exactly what I needed that night. The pictures and videos you'll see here in a moment of our students, and to see so many of you there celebrating and joyful, I needed that joy that day in my emotional bank. Because the following week, on June 27th, my mother passed and we said goodbye. My summer has been spent with my children and my family grieving, but also sharing in the joy of memories with my mother, their Laura. Feeling joy and connecting with family, cousins, aunties, uncles, friends over mourning, but also celebrating her life. So I have to take this moment to thank so many of my colleagues, Vanessa Johnson in particular, and so many others, and especially the trustees, who all made it possible for me to be where I needed to be the most for my family, and where I needed to be as a chancellor for the Seattle colleges. I want our Seattle colleges to be a workplace where that care and support is not only afforded to me as the person at the top, but that we can build a culture that better supports where we all need to be in full recognition of our whole lives as members of families and communities, alongside our roles as faculty, program staff, directors, groundskeepers, deans, managers, and so many more. I believe it to be my responsibility to set that tone and support our colleagues and you to create that environment together over time. So why do I share all of this with you? Because as a lifelong learner and student, I believe there are important lessons we can take from all of life's experiences, including grief and how it manifests and how we respond. Grief, at its simplest of definitions, is the natural reaction to loss, and it is also a word for the process of coping with loss. And we know it is not only limited to how we experience the death of someone we know. We experience grief in other ways too, in breakups, in the fading of a friendship, in the loss of something familiar. I have learned that grief is normal. It is a natural and necessary process for a healthy human condition. To intentionally process, experience, and heal from grief is critical to growth and critical to thriving. And if this is true for the human condition, then I have to believe it is true for an organization as well. Don't we experience grief when we also experience change? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Do these stages of grief sound familiar to our work world too sometimes? And haven't we been facing a breakneck rate of change for the last 4 or 5 years? Some of this change has happened to us, certainly, the pandemic chief among those examples. Some of it has become necessitated from within, like our leadership changes and transitions and vacancies. Some of this change we're seeking out ourselves. I'm thinking of the transformation, the systemic change that we're seeking through guided pathways and other efforts to improve the student experience, to remake the student experience, for example. So as we look toward a new academic year, let's make space and embrace these stages of grief and the adjustments and reactions that follow. Let's share in the acknowledgement that grieving the impacts of change will bring a range of reactions, and that we can intentionally process, experience, and grow from these reactions so that we can thrive together on behalf of our students. We can make space for and acknowledge our organizational emotions as grief, but we cannot stop or slow the rate of change or challenge that will rise to meet us on our road forward. A very present example of challenges ahead of us is the election season in a deeply divided and bifurcated political culture. This will exacerbate some of the reactions to world and national events that are also playing out around us, from the wars between Israel and Hamas, Ukraine and Russia, and the civil war in Sudan, to mass shootings in schools and other common spaces, to economic hardships that our colleagues referenced earlier, brought on by inflation, especially here in the Seattle area. We also face our own challenges here at home. For example, we expect to face budgetary challenges this year on a statewide level. While I've been focused since I started in 2022 on stabilizing and getting clarity and staffing for our finance areas, we continue to exist in a dynamic statewide and national fiscal environment marked by inflation and the general cost of doing our business of educating outpacing our allocations and our ability to generate enough revenue to keep up. I don't share all of this with you only to freak you out or leave you feeling terribly anxious. After all, changes are constant. All of this is to say that even as we work to stabilize, rebuild, and through a strategic planning process, set our course together for the future, our environment has and will continue to evolve rapidly around us. The space we may want change and slow down for grieving to thriving process may be overtaken by reactions to some of this rapid change. But I ask that we work together to keep the intentionality behind that. But ultimately, I believe we have many reasons to continue to feel hopeful and joyful in where we're going as a college district. Because we have on staff and continue to attract the best of the best. You are already here, or we are bringing them here. Folks who want to stay, who want to come and work for us in the Seattle colleges. The presidents are a visible example today, but I'm also hearing each week excitement about the folks that your search committees are finding and that you're hiring across the district into positions. The work that so many of you are accomplishing in your roles here as well. And along with my healthy respect and now a deep experience with grief, I am still a relentlessly hopeful person. In my nearly 25 years of working in the Seattle colleges, I've remained committed to you and to our students, and I know that's how so many of you feel as well. I fully believe that we are, collectively as the Seattle colleges, the best higher education institution in Washington. After all, yes, that is worth cheering for. After all, and some of you have heard my UW TED Talk, where UW serves 33,000 undergraduates, we serve 30,000. Where our transfers to UW actually outperform their native students, those are the students who start there in their first year, in GPA. And we do so at a fraction of the per student allocation that UW and other public universities receive. By the way, go Cougs, whoever watched the Apple Cup this weekend. Kind of enjoy my moment of picking on UW. I'm sorry, I also have a degree from UW, but go Cougs. And we know our students and our graduates are all over our city and our region. They're here as your colleagues, your medical care professionals, your business owners in your neighborhoods, educators in your kids' schools, innovators in so many of Seattle's major employers. They're community leaders, they're professionals and technicians in every field and job you see driving up and down I-5 or walking around in your community. We're everywhere. And it's a legislative session this year. And you've heard about this earlier. We will be pushing for strengthened compensation, among other things. And you can expect to see a different approach this year, a more unified approach from the different voices that want to be out there advocating for the needs of Seattle College's students and colleagues. You can expect to see more shared about what our legislative strategy will be to press our legislators to better support us in our funding and in their legislative ways of support. So as we move forward into this academic year and the road ahead of us as the Seattle colleges, let's approach change and the reactions to it with the same care and intention that we encourage in one another on a personal level. Let's acknowledge that change brings reactions, that change and is necessary for us to thrive together. And let's thank one another for the work that we each perform for our students, whether direct or indirect, because our students deserve the absolute best of each of us and to support them in their paths to greatness. So thank you, otters, tree frogs, and even my unofficial seagulls. Let's have a great year together, Seattle Colleges. Thank you. Oh, tigers and tigers, sorry. Video to help carry some of this good feeling forward before we start acknowledging some of our colleagues. That sense of collective impact, of the things that we can accomplish together, in addition to the incredible work that we do at each of our colleges, to me, that's really meaningful.
There are truly people out there in education that care about you. They care about their job. They care to see you grow.
Now I feel like I can do it all, and I've met my people.
If you persevere and if you stay with it, then your dream will eventually come true.
I'm here to be the best. I think Seattle Colleges has the potential to be the best community college in the nation.
In my mind, it's not where you are at the time, it's where you're going. Just keep moving forward.
Thank you. So enjoy getting a next round of pastries and coffee. We're going to move forward with the program, and it's a chance to recognize some of our colleagues. So we have more than 2,000 faculty and staff in Seattle colleges. I don't know if everybody knew that we were that big. I know that, for example, here at South Seattle College, South is actually the largest employer in West Seattle. This year, we're recognizing 4 of our colleagues with the Trustees Lifelong Learning Award. These awards celebrate their outstanding commitment and dedication to students, their jobs, and to working together. The awards were established in 1991 to help support the intellectual and professional growth of Seattle College's employees. Each of today's awardees will receive a $1,500 check toward that goal. It's not a gift card, it's an actual check. The awards have special meaning because the nominations were submitted by your own colleagues. So I'd love to gather everyone's attention so that we can acknowledge our colleagues, and I'd like to invite Louise Chernin and Teresita Batayola, our 2 trustees, to join me near the podium. So this year's lifelong learners are Akeen Alston, part-time faculty. Akeen works in early childhood education, math and science at North Seattle Colleges and was nominated by Annie Garrett. Akeen, could you please join us up front if you're here today? And let's give Akeen a round of applause. For full-time faculty, the winner is Jenny Mao, faculty counselor, nominated by Alice Melling at North. Come on up, Jenny, to receive your award. For classified staff, the winner is Carrie Thomas, program specialist for Mainstay, nominated by Rebecca Jansen at Seattle Central. Carrie, if you're here today, please come and join us. Hello. And receive your award. And for exempt staff, the winner is Joe Barrientos, VP of Student Services, nominated by Cal Lexio at Seattle Central and Christina Mai-Mostaf, also at Central. We will be sharing fuller bios of our colleagues that are winning these awards today over email so that the entire district can learn about them and congratulate them on their awards. So thank you very much for your dedication. I would like any of you who are also previous lifelong learning awardees in the room to please stand up and be recognized as well by your colleagues. I know that there are a number of you that are here. Wave. We've been recognized each year since 1991, and we're fortunate to have a number of colleagues who've been recognized in this way, and very pleased to welcome you all to join that wonderful group. So congratulations to our Lifelong Learning awardees. While we're on the topic of accomplishments of colleagues, I'd like to draw your attention to an internal initiative that we're starting to share our accomplishments and share for one another. Throughout the year, in conversations with you, or sometimes through email, I'll hear about really incredible awards or recognitions that different folks across our organization are receiving from their professional organizations, or the colleges, or community organizations. And we haven't really had a way to centrally celebrate those and acknowledge them together. We basically want to be able to celebrate you as individuals and celebrate ourselves as the excellent employees of the excellent faculty and staff that make up the Seattle colleges. We've received a lot of positive feedback on our Points of Pride webpage on the website, and we want to expand this by giving employees an opportunity to self-submit or share the awards and accomplishments of one another. You can also submit a photo if you have one, if there are pictures of you receiving an award, or pictures of you in general that would accompany an announcement. So we would list these awards and recognitions on our website, and next year and each year moving forward at Convocation, we would take time in our program to celebrate them amongst your colleagues. So you can look for an email about this later this week, and we'll send reminders to submit things throughout the year. But please, help us celebrate one another. I know some folks don't always want to be publicly acknowledged, and that we will totally respect that, but at the same time, you all are doing incredible work and receiving awards and recognition for it in so many different spaces. We want to be able to celebrate you as well. And so now, we're going to switch over to strategic planning. And I would like to invite Bradley Lane, DeAndre Fisher, and Greg Dempsey. I think Greg Dempsey primarily will lead us in this next section to the podium to give some updates on the strategic planning process. Greg.
All right, thank you, Dr. Rosie. It's good to see everyone. Either this room is getting smaller or we're getting bigger. We did this presentation last year. This is very impressive. My name is Greg Dempsey. I serve as the Executive Director of Institutional Effectiveness at South Seattle College. I'm also the co-chair for the strategic planning process and steering committee district-wide with Dr. Bradley Lane. Before I jump into my presentation real quick, just to get some grounding here, I know that we kind of maybe got a sense of that when the presidents were introduced, but I'd love to hear from where you're from. I know many of you, but be loud and proud from the location you're from. So who is from north here? All right. How about central? All right. And how about south? And as Dr. Rosie mentioned, there might be a little home field advantage there, but thank you for engaging in that. Oh, and how about Siegel?
Oh, got a mic.
Okay. It was at this event last year where Dr. Lane and I officially launched our strategic planning process and structure. Dr. Lane, Mr. Fisher, and I are excited to be here today to share some updates, highlights, and next steps regarding this work. We shared this with you last year, and it is always a good reminder that you can see on the screen. So what is a strategic plan? It sets forward a common set of beliefs, commitments, and priorities for the organization to focus on. It establishes goals and strategies that will be achieved over a specific amount of time. It informs budget and resource allocation year over year. So why implement this? It prioritizes and identifies future directions, aspirations, and operational strategies for us to focus on while affirming our commitment to our mission. Wanted to highlight, Barb, can you help? Okay, sorry, there's a different screen up here still. I wanted to highlight our timeline, and we talked a little bit about this last year. We are getting very close. We are in the home stretch. As you can see highlighted in yellow on the screen, which is really the strategic planning process, we have a goal of gaining board approval and adoption at the end of this fall quarter. As mentioned earlier, we officially launched our work over a year ago. And I want to take the time to highlight and share some of the accomplishments and milestones to date. We're good. Last fall, 2023, we kicked off our district-wide steering committee of 40-plus individuals who represented students and all employee types and functions. These folks have been 100% committed to the work, well, during 3-hour, 9 total, I remind you, meetings facilitated by me. Of those on the steering committee that are in attendance today, would you mind standing up? In winter 2024, we launched our data gathering phase of the plan, and it was a tremendous success. We had over 1,700 responses and or participants through a variety of different focus groups, surveys, and interviews. If you participated in one or more of these activities, would you mind raising your hand? I'm sure more of you participated. Thank you so much for your participation. It's valued and allows us to pursue a more inclusive and meaningful process. Using the data gathering phase, the steering committee was able to draft and come to consensus on 4 distinct district-wide goals that will prioritize our work for the foreseeable future. I'm excited that Dr. Lane will come on stage to share those with you in a short moment. Lastly, during the summer and fall, the steering committee, institutional effectiveness, and many others have been and will be identifying strategies and key performance indicators that will support and guide our organizational work towards the achievement of these goals. As you can see and mentioned in our timeline, we will be seeking board support and approval by the end of fall quarter. I do encourage you to grab the QR code that you see on the screen for further details and information on our process and updates. I would now like to ask Mr. DeAndre Fisher to come up and highlight some exciting work around EDIC that has supported, guided, and informed our process over the last year. Mr. Fisher.
Greetings, community. Thank you so much. As we think about our journey to really look at our new strategic plan, centering our strategic plan in the words of what we are wanting to really do, I remember Dr. Rosie speaking about becoming an anti-racist, anti-bias institution in 2019. With that being said, now understanding that these words now must truly manifest itself to be actions and be seen within our strategic plan. In 2019, the state board, we adopted what is legal and racial equity. I think the Seattle colleges, we understand the importance of legal and racial equity, understand the importance of what is equity, what is diversity, what is inclusion, what is community. Understanding it and then actually putting it into actions are 2 different things, and that's what we hope to actually garner. I must say that the work of becoming an anti-racist institution is not just work that the Seattle colleges will be embarking upon, but it's work that all 34 colleges within the state board will be embarking upon because it is within our legislation. I want to highlight really quickly the work that was done behind the scenes in 2019 and in 2021 during legislative sessions that help support the passaging of this legislation. Next slide. I want to highlight really quickly Dr. Sayumi. I'm not sure if she's here. If you can stand really quickly, Dr. Rosie and also Dr. Beloved Hunt, who helped in sessions to make sure that this passage and this legislation. Why is that important? Is because when we think about the policies, when we think about where we're moving, becoming and operationalizing anti-racist and becoming also operationalizing anti-blackness. Here are some common definitions and some language that we must understand first. We have a session going on later on today to go over our statement, to go over what will be the first draft of our language, and we ask that you attend the statement. But what I want to say is the community must first acknowledge that when we think about what is racism in the United States, it is grounded in anti-Black racism. We see that within our policies, our procedures, our departments, how we conduct ourselves as an institution. We first must address that first in doing this work, and that is what we hope to do. Understanding that the definitions and the common language for us requires us to have the same language of what is equity, what is racial equity, what is anti-bias, what is anti-racism, and what is, once again, anti-Black racism. These are our first steps in which we will move forward with. Having this concept, next slide please. Having the concept in the theory of change in which we will use is understanding that having anti-racism framework only serves as a conceptual tool to examine the institution. We all play a role. We all are people in the systems. The systems only work and benefit for those who are in the systems. So what work are we going to do as individuals to really examine how we show up in this work is what we're calling on you to do as a community together this coming up year. It is important that we examine the institutional practices and that are going to be necessary to confront systematic racism. It is not about pointing the finger, but it is about understanding that it is work that we must do all together. Becoming anti-racism is an active process of identifying the challenges and confronting. This process in which we will take over the next couple of years will require us not only to look at our organizational structures, our policies, our practices, our behaviors, and our altitudes too as well. This is an active process. So our theory of change stems from, of course, our NADHE framework in which many of you were a part of and have attended to as well, for advancing racial equity, for our student success, and we have strategies. We must remember that in these strategies and priorities, we have 10 priorities. You'll learn more about them if you attend the session and throughout the year. But I encourage us to understand that for us, when we think about what our institutional success, what does that mean for the Seattle colleges? What does institutional and student success mean for us? It is about removing those barriers in which the students who face the greatest amount of systematic barriers, when those barriers are removed, then we know we have become successful as a community. We recognize that these corrections in the system who hurt and harm our Black, Indigenous, and people of color and all under-supported and under-marginalized communities. We'll take intentional action, and we hope to do that, and also we'll take immediate action, but then most importantly, we'll take action over time. So I thank you all, and hopefully you all will join the session and learn how to get more involved. We have a table in the back that you hopefully can get more involved to as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Associate Vice Chancellor Bishop. What I want to take a little bit of time to share with you this morning are the draft language of our four big goals. In addition to the session that Associate Vice Chancellor Fisher and his team are facilitating today around the theory of change framework from NADHE and the equity statement that's going to really kick off our strategic plan, we also have sessions this morning that let you work and provide feedback. The draft language of the four big goals of the plan, but also the things that will show up underneath those goals at the level of actual strategies, as well as the kind of data that we'll use to determine whether or not we're meeting our goals. I want to step back just a second to remind the organization this is really only the second district strategic plan we've ever done. The first district strategic plan that we did, the one that just kind of ended, we put together only after the individual colleges each had their own strategic plans, and we kind of braided them together. This is the first time as a district we have really done strategic planning together from the very, very beginning. And the results of that work, I think, will show a plan that in some ways looks and feels different than other plans that we've had in the past. So I want to start there and then share a little about where the work has taken us. Four big goals. one of the things that you see is that really inside each goal there is an anti-bias, anti-racist framework imperative, that's how we do the work. You'll also see that there isn't a standalone equity, diversity, inclusion goal because that is infused inside each of the 4 goals. There's a goal around culturally responsive teaching and learning, and in this goal we would expect to see initiatives and strategies really around providing equity-focused and culturally responsive teaching and learning standards and practices, especially with robust and inclusive professional development. We see providing the kinds of learning opportunities, instruction programs, and curriculum across modalities in ways that align with community needs and enhance the success of students. We see anti-bias, anti-racist frameworks showing up in our instructional assessment practices. And then we also see robust review and assessment processes that analyze industry need as well as community need. We have a goal around comprehensive, inclusive student experience, and in this goal, we would expect to see the kinds of strategies and activities around guided pathways that are supporting getting students on a clear and structured academic journey, and then really helping them progress through every step of the way. This is also the goal where we would expect to see programs and services that alleviate students' personal and financial barriers to accessing education, where we would establish more comprehensive feedback mechanisms to get student voice, to gather impact, to gather insights and inform the kind of actions that we take as a college system to improve the overall student experience. It's where we would likely see initiatives that foster a sense of belonging for students by creating really inclusive communities, supportive networks, those kinds of opportunities that connect students to the colleges and to each other. And then it's also where we would see expanding access to support services and admissions and financial aid processes and outreach, those kinds of things. Something that's maybe a little different in this strategic plan is this 3rd goal that's about really the employee experience. And this came loud and clear through the feedback that so many of you gave in all of those sessions that Greg alluded to. So this is where we would expect to see an onboarding program that is really systemic, where we would expect to see training and professional development opportunities for all of our staff, for supervisor training, leadership training, team management, where we would also see initiatives that foster a sense of belonging for employees and create the kind of inclusive communities and networks and opportunities to connect employees to the college and to each other. And that's something that's really new. We haven't had a goal like this in strategic plans before, but it's from the feedback that you all have given us that this is going to determine what we focus on and where we put our resources for the foreseeable future. Then there's a goal also coming through loud and clear about our structures and our practices. And in this goal, we would see modernizing the physical and technological infrastructure of the colleges, prioritizing environmental sustainability, but also, again, I think some new kinds of priorities, like establishing more well-defined, shared, collaborative governance structures, like fostering cultures of openness, fairness, and responsibility by improving communication between leadership and employees about how decisions are made, as well as moving to a more multi-year budgeting process that can be more responsive to the kinds of changes that the Chancellor alluded to in her remarks, where we can really have longer-term goals and we can arrive at kind of more resilient financial environment that isn't always responding to the latest change. So I think the feedback that you all have given us, the students have given us, has been really crucial for developing these goals. And if you want to participate more in what happens underneath the actual strategies, the activities, come to the morning session, because that's going to be the stuff that we're working on next. And once the strategic plan is approved by the board in December, you'll have the opportunity, should it be approved, you'll have the opportunity to engage in operational planning at the college level or at Siegel Center to really figure out how your part of the organization is really going to carry out the plan. So next steps, come to today's session this morning where we do more strategy work and development. Your feedback definitely matters. We've been taking it into account, and we keep needing it in order to create the kind of plan that really matches where the colleges want to go. The steering committee, which has about 30 folks on it from across the district, as well as the institutional effectiveness offices, are going to facilitate more conversations to finalize the other parts of the plan. There'll be a first reading of the plan at the November board meeting, and then a vote on the final plan potentially at the December meeting. But then the work doesn't really end. The work really just begins, because then the colleges and Siegel Center will take it and figure out how they operationalize it. So thanks for your engagement thus far. Thanks for your engagement this morning. We hope some of you participate in the strategic planning session that's to come today. And I think that's it. And who do I turn it to take us home?
Round of applause, please. All right, I want to thank everyone for coming and participating in this morning portion of the session. Before we leave, how about a hand for the ASL interpreters? Also want to show our appreciation to the South. They've upgraded their facilities with video and audio. We're still working out some gremlins, but it's going to be fabulous when it's done. So how about a hand for that? A few other things. The professional portraits are taking place until 3 p.m. First come, first served basis. So if you want to go have a photo taken, you can do that in rooms 140 and 128. We are a little bit behind, so we're going to alter the schedule a bit. And the workshops are all being held in Olympic Hall. Well, not all, because one's been held here, right? Yeah, one's being held here. All the rest are being held in Olympic Hall. We'll start those at 11:15, and those will go to 11:45. So that's different than what's on your program. I'm sorry. No, 11:55, excuse me. 11:15 to 11:55, and then we'll start at noon and go to 12:40. So that ensures everybody has a full 40 minutes. We built some time in there anyway, so we're going to have to use that up. Strategic planning session is going to be right here in the Brockey, so if you want to be a part of that, stay. Lunch will take place back here in the Brockey around 12:30. So we want to let those sessions end, but we have plenty of food, so don't feel like you need to rush back. And take a galaxy ball from your centerpiece and enjoy it. So as we close again, thank everyone for joining us. Have a good morning, stay engaged. Bye-bye.